Well, it's time for the GenCon 2023 recap stream. As you can tell, my voice is, shot to shit. But that's okay. That's okay. I wanted to do the stream today while it's all still fresh in my head and before I launch Reap tomorrow, and then that just consumes my mind. So I just thought it'd be kind of cool to hang out, kind of just share a little bit about what my experience with GenCon was like, in all sorts of ways. Hey, BLG, good to see ya. Speaking of GenCon experiences, I finally got to see Brandon in person, and what a delight. What a ridiculously delightful experience. We got to share breakfast 2 days in a row. Yeah, exactly. We're gonna launch. I need like 8 to 10 more guys to help me launch this thing. Yeah, that was me. I'm the one that stole the Lorcana cards. Here's the thing that people might not have known about Lorcana if you weren't there or watching the Twitter feed for Lorcana. There's the whole, like, card theft thing. That's one thing. But there's so much demand for people to go to the Lorcana booth that they would start the line at 6 p.m. the day before each day. So Thursday, which is the first day, if you were there early, you're good. Then at 6 p.m. when the exhibitor hall closes, the line for Friday's access to cards begins. So 6 p.m. Thursday begins the line for Friday's access, which means you're getting in line, what is that, like 18 hours or something ahead of time. So people were just like there all night. What a wild fucking thing. I can't believe people did that. Like, I mean, that's not for me. That's not my jam. But I guess if you really, yeah, I guess they really wanted that like exclusive Mickey card or whatever. Yeah, exactly. It's just it was probably way easier to just steal something. Well, they're probably resellers because there was an exclusive card that you could only get there. They super limited what you could buy. I didn't buy anything because I couldn't wait in line for 18 hours. But like I know that they limited what you could buy to like one starter or one booster or something like that. But then anybody who got something got like a exclusive card. So yeah, well, it's probably like possible that people were just grabbing that and then reselling it because make a shit ton of money off of it for sure. So yeah, I got back last night. Not too late either, which was great. We'll kind of talk about the setting up and breaking down process so people kind of know what that's like, but didn't get back too late. Haven't really spoken much. Haven't really used my voice very much at all since getting back. Been drinking tea and eating Ricolas. But here we are. So what I thought I would do today for folks who are interested is kind of just generally talk about like all sorts of things about GenCon, like the application process and what that was like, and logistics of like getting into the con, what setting up and running a booth was like. Probably share some stories about meeting people and talking about how important that was for me from a mental health perspective and a desire to keep doing game design perspective. Things I generally learned, mostly in the framework of like as somebody who ran a booth. And then we'll end by talking about the numbers because I know some people like hearing about the numbers and a lot of people and some people don't. When I say the numbers, I mean sales numbers. I'm going to get into specifics about how much we sold, how much of each item we sold, the total that we made, and all of that. But we'll do that at the end so that if you're not interested in that stuff, you can bounce out early. But I wanted to show off my shit first. I wanted to show off all the stuff I got. I didn't get to go around the hall very much, and this is part of the running a booth and things I learned section. I was glued to the booth most of the time. Like, truly, Mike and I did not leave the exhibitor hall the whole Gen Con. I didn't go to a single event, like an official Gen Con event. I only went to one other area of Gen Con, which was the Makers Market, just to see Kyle, Latino, and Kenny Webb. Just to hang out with them for like 5 minutes and then run back to my booth. So I didn't get to like buy as much stuff as I wanted, but that's probably a good thing. But I got a bunch of stuff, and I just wanted to highlight some of the things that I'm excited about. Terminus. I got to actually meet John Boyle. What a delightful person. John was helping run the Possum Creek booth. It's a game about like wandering a liminal space and using things that you note to write answers to prompts and stuff like that, which is exactly what I'm going to do tomorrow when Reap releases, and I'm going to step away from my computer, and it's going to be awesome. I, of course, picked up Toadie's Zine Club Passport just because I'm looking forward to just tracking zines that I'm picking up and things like that. Yeah, we were so booth locked. I will absolutely be bringing more people next year because I think I can get up to four exhibitor badges. And then you can always get more badges for people based off of just buying them or like running events and stuff. And definitely going to do that so that we have a Gila RPG's team there, like the Possum Creek folks did. Yeah, Zine Passport is cool. Of course, Charlie handed me the latest thing that he's working on. Congrats to Charlie and Alex, by the way. They won silver for Into the Ceston Citadel, which is just a really freaking good book. Sam Sorensen gave me this, and I had not met Sam before, and I have stories about Sam after this. What an unbelievably fascinating and awesome person. Handed me this with virtually no introduction, said this is my manifesto, and it's a really fascinating breakdown of Sam's thoughts on games. Sam is an academic, studies this stuff, teaches classes at NYU, I believe, about it. So it was cool talking to a fellow academic about this sort of stuff. And Sam was a fascinating character. Fetch My Blade. Ethan Yen gave me a copy of Fetch My Blade, which I am so excited about. The premise is, I want to read it so I get it right. You're the dog of a retired legendary master of the sword, tasked with a quest of your own. Retrieve your master's fabled weapon in time for their final duel. I can't wait to play this. Can't wait to read it. Galen gave me an early copy of The Facility. I backed it on Kickstarter, and since Galen, who you've seen do a lot of the art that's in like Hunt and everything, gave me that, which I'm super excited about. I got a physical copy of Riley and Jay's Venture and Dungeon. I had the PDF, but I'm happy to have the physical copy of it. Apocalypse Keys. The book is so fucking gorgeous. It's so gorgeous. Ray did an unbelievable job. The whole team did. I now actually am an owner of Thousand Year Vampire. I've never owned the book before. So I'm excited about that. And then I got Strata, which I didn't have a physical copy of, and specifically went over so that I could get Grant and Chris to sign it. That was a wild and starstruck moment for me as somebody who's a massive fan of their work. And then what might be like the highlight book, which is The Wild Sea. The quality is amazing. It looks incredible. It's a tome, and I can't wait to flip through it. And there are other things, but I just wanted to highlight some of the stuff that I picked up because it's cool. I'm probably gonna end up doing like a whole bunch of videos on games too. So Gen Con was amazing. It was amazing. Just like before I get into any of these things, incredible experience. I had never been to Gen Con before, as an attendee or as a exhibitor. I live in Chicago. It's not that far away. But I've always been busy during Gen Con, either traveling, like my wife and I travel during the summer because we have summer break, so we are oftentimes in like Korea or something like that. Um, or obviously with the pandemic, I couldn't and didn't want to go. Um, so I have not been to this convention before, and it was incredible. It was massive. And to give you perspective, we went to Origins at the end of June, and that was like fine. Actually, it sucked. And this was like, I don't know, 5 times bigger, something like that. It was outrageous how many people there were. There were a lot of like people kind of throwing numbers around. One number I heard a lot, but they sold out on Saturday badges. They were estimating like 80 or 85,000 people. It was nuts. There was a shit ton of people, which was cool. But the cool thing was meeting people and being around people, which I'll talk about in a little bit. But like, I came back from this exhausted, yes, but so re-energized as like a from like a design perspective, from like a hey, I want to keep doing this, I want to be part of this sort of perspective. Really just like excited to do game design now. So the process, this was our first year presenting, which means you go through the whole process, and they do not accept many new people every year. They make that abundantly clear. So I got really lucky that they gave me a booth. It's expensive. It's expensive to do it. I'll talk about expenses and all that in the numbers. But I got in, and they gave me, I was originally assigned to be in the exhibitor alley, which is the which is like the section for first time exhibitors, and it's in like the back corner. And when they first assigned us to that section, they gave us a number that doesn't exist. It wasn't on the map. So we got 3069, and it went all the way up. The last booth was 3068, and I was like, oh, okay. Reached out to them. They had made a mistake with like a bunch of booking stuff, and then they moved us to 400. So we ended up at 468, which was literally right down, really close to Indie Press Revolution, Possum Creek, Plus One EXP, Possible Worlds with Tyler Crumrine, Feral Indie Studios, where Charlie and Alex were, and Wet Ink Games. Like, we were all there within 30 seconds of each other, which was amazing. Which was very similar to the experience at PAX Unplugged, where many of us were together, or like kind of grouped together, and the opposite of Origins, where they scattered us as far away from each other as possible. Now, there were other RPG people in the hall that were in other places, like Rowan, Rook, and Deckard were all the way on the other side of the world, and Free League was all the way over there. The IGDN folks were in 100. Yeah, PLG. I spent a lot of money within 20 feet of my booth because it was all super good. So a very unfortunate error worked out in our favor, and now, since we have presented once, we won't be in that alley, and we have a little bit more control over asking like where we want to go for next year. And we will be going next year. At least that is our intention, because it was very successful. So we intend on going next year, minus some possible like real life complications that might not make that possible, which we'll see. So application process was interesting. I will say, comparing this to the other conventions that I've done, which is not many, I've only done Origins and PAX. PAX has continued to be the most straightforward and the most informative of them all. They're so on the ball about helping people and understanding all the steps. GenCon, admittedly, is massive, and so maybe they just don't do that as much, and they don't have as many new people, but like, I really didn't know what the fuck was going on, and we figured it out. But it was still not like a whole lot of trouble necessarily. Yeah, PAX was just great. They're so on the ball with being communicative and helpful and like really laying out ahead of time. Like, here's what the whole process is gonna be like. Here's everything that you need to do. Gen Con's like, okay, you're in. You can figure it out, right? Um, so we did a new setup with our booth, which um, I shared pictures of on Twitter. You can see this is kind of part of the booth there. There's a whole other side that has a smaller table where we also had art and a couple other zines. But this is the setup that we went with, which you can kind of tell it is pulled away from the aisle. So we made sort of this bookstore library vibe. Um, so all the books had a sheet in front of it that had like 2 or 3 bullet points that gave you the rundown of the game so you could get it, you understood what it was right away. Fresh copies were above for you to grab when you wanted to buy something. All these were table copies, so people were just flipping through this stuff. And importantly for us, it was away from the aisle. So people could get away from the incredibly crowded aisles, step into the solitude of our booth, and flip through some books and not be in the crush, not feel people like trying to sneak past them or blocking traffic or anything like that. It just says, come on in. Mike and I were back here behind this. There was enough space for us that you can see a chair here. We were back there. And it was just like, cool, we're back here. We'll stay back here. We'll only come back up front if we need to like restock things. But generally we stay back here so that gives plenty of people room in the booth to do what they need. And as a result, again, I've only done 2 other conventions, but we could sort of host way more people at our booth with this setup than we could ever do with table at the aisle. More people could be inside. More people could be looking at things at one time. None of these people felt pressured to do things quickly because they're like waves of people that are like battering against them in the aisle. And it's an efficient use of the space, right? When you put the tables at the front, what are you doing with all the space behind you? It's just storage at that point, right? It's just places for you to put like shelves and storage and displays, I guess. But like, why, if we have 10 by 10, we should use a lot of it. And like, Mike and I don't take up a lot of space. We want potential customers in the books to take up the space. So we did not come up with this setup on our own. I want to credit where credit is due. Amber, who did the booth design for Cloud Curio, which Cloud Curio and MapCrow worked together at Origins, and they had a similar sort of style, inviting people in. And Amber was very kind enough to send the layout that they had done and had used so that Mike and I could kind of use that as a source of inspiration and kind of tweak it to fit what worked for our setup. Because their booth also had like a lot of merch and other things. But a huge shout out to Amber and the Cloud Curio crew and all of that for inspiring us to really rethink the way our booth should be designed. And we will like absolutely keep doing this with like some modifications in the future, because we're gonna have like a whole zine zone. So because like Rigged and Seasons and Corvid Court, which are zines, they don't stack as well up here as books, so we're gonna like move that stuff to somewhere else. Yeah. Blew you away with how much killer shit. That was also the other thing, is like people would say like, so how long have you been doing this? We were like 3.5 years, and they're like, what? Because we've made a lot of stuff in 3.5 years, which I'm really happy about. Getting the new banner, by the way. That banner is too big, and I don't like the white with the color. We're gonna make it thinner, sleeker, all white logo on like a darker background, but that's just another thing. The one problem with this design is our cool pop-up banners kind of get blocked, but we realized we can get real small ones that we can kind of put like on top of stuff. But otherwise, we were really, really, really happy with this this booth, the setup of the booth. Setting it up, the actual process was also pretty easy because we did the same thing that we did at Origins, which was we skipped the marshalling yard entirely. For these cons, when there's a shit ton of people, how it works is you drive up, there's a marshalling yard where you kind of stay with your car for a while, then they send cars in regimented numbers so that the dock doesn't get overwhelmed. You drop yourself off at the dock, you move it in, and you gotta go move your car. And it's really hectic because there's a shit ton of people doing this. And we didn't do that. The hotel that we were staying at was across the street, essentially. We were at the Hyatt. And so we literally just parked the car at the hotel and just moved things from the car. We had a wagon to move things, and it took 2 trips, maybe 3. And that was it. Because you can just walk right in as an exhibitor with your stuff. So setup was super easy to do. Moving our stuff over. We were unpacked at the end of the con. We were unpacked and in the car out of there in an hour and a half. While everybody else who was doing the docks had to wait 2 to 3 hours before they had even rolled up the carpets and were letting people get to their cars in the first place. So that's our hack. Now, again, we don't have as much stuff, right? Obviously, board game companies are bringing pallets worth of things, but we're bringing just boxes. Just a few, we had 6 boxes of books, brought back like 2.5 essentially. So we sold a bunch of stuff. So it was even easier breaking down than setting up. This contraption was the hardest part about setting up, just because we had never set it up before, and so we messed it up a bunch of times. And yeah, I did the same thing when I was at Origins. Literally, the hotel we stayed at was across the street from a convention, so I just one crosswalk that I was going back and forth with the stuff, done. And if we go down with a team, it'll be even easier next time. So setting up and breaking down was pretty easy. In terms of running a booth, it was exhausting. It's 8-hour days, and then the last day is 6 hours. And it's loud. There's a lot of people. You're pitching games all day long to people. And since it was just 2 of us, thankfully, at least there were 2 of us so that we could kind of take breaks, like go to the bathroom and somebody else would be there. Or like, hey, I really wanted to go buy this thing. Can you stay at the booth? But it was exhausting to run the whole thing, just the 2 of us. I kind of go back and forth on like having like a bunch of people to help kind of run it and do it in shifts, like the Possum Creek people. Sounds awesome. But the other thing, and it kind of leads to the next thing, which was because I was at the booth, I got to meet a lot of people. Like a lot of people came up and said, hey, I really like your stuff. I just want to say thank you. Or people even asked me to sign books, which was like a wild, kind of cool experience. Or, just people that I admire would come up to the booth. And if I'm not at the booth all the time, I had like this worry that I would miss people. Because like I'm just sitting there, and then like Chris McDowell, who wrote Bastion Land, is just sitting there, and and I look over, and he's like, "Hi, I'm Chris," and in my head I'm like, "I know who the fuck you are. I can't believe you're in my booth." And like the Stockholm cartel folks coming by and stuff like that. So running a booth was fun. We never ate lunch. We didn't have lunch once the whole time. We had a huge breakfast every morning at the hotel. So Mike and I would eat breakfast every morning, and then 2 of those days, BLG joined us for breakfast as well. I'm so sorry, Brandon, that I didn't sign Hunt. I totally forgot about that. Yeah, Brandon joined us for 2 mornings as well. So we ate a massive breakfast. And then we ate like Cliff Bars and like snacks essentially at lunch, just in short bursts, and then would go eat dinner somewhere after being exhausted. So running a booth was generally, though, pretty smooth, and I think it was pretty smooth because of the setup, right? Like, this was so much easier to facilitate and work with people in this as opposed to if Mike and I were at a table up the front trying to maintain everybody looking at stacks of books. That would have been hard, I think. And this was nice. Because we could be slightly quieter in terms of how we talked, because people would be away from the aisle at least. We were still shouting the whole time, which is why my voice is totally destroyed. But running the booth was not bad. It was just there were only 2 of us, which means as a result, I didn't get to do as much stuff. This is kind of like part of the things I learned. Like, I didn't get to experience GenCon other than the booth and meeting people at the booth and hanging out with people after the con, like not doing any event. So I never even made it to the free play area where all that stuff was going on. I didn't do a single event. Thanks for hanging out for a bit, Will. I'll talk to you later. Yeah, I didn't get to do any events or anything like that. And again, that's just because there was only 2 of us, and it was the big show, and so I'd like to do that in the future, is to do a couple things. Meeting people is the highlight. Meeting people is the real highlight. I mean, just holy shit. People who knew me and liked my stuff and were like, hey, I just want to say thank you. That was amazing. People who would buy something and then go tell a friend about it, and they would come back to the booth and that person would buy something. Amazing. Meeting people who are my friends that I've never had a chance to actually meet in person, like Brandon, right? Like BLG. We interact all the time online, and finally getting to be like, you're a person. Breakfast with Brandon might have been one of just the absolute highlights in terms of like interacting with humans at this thing, because we learned about the crazy hour, which is a thing that happens at Peruvian weddings, which is about throwing people in the air and doing a whole lot of crazy shit. And that was so much fun, just like talking about things like that. There are so many people that I got to meet that like I can't possibly, if I try to remember everybody, I know I'm gonna forget. But just, it was a really delightful experience. Pardon me. Meeting a lot of people, talking with a lot of people. And like I said, I got to meet some people that to me are like really big deals, that are like hero level designers or people in the scene that is like really meaningful to me in terms of being able to meet them. Like the Stockholm Cartel people, like Johan and all of them. They were so nice. They were so awesome. It was great talking with them. Like suddenly I'm sitting at a table and I hear a very familiar voice, and I realize that I'm sitting at a table with James D'Amato, who like runs the One Shot Network, and he's such a distinct voice where you're like, I know you're James D'Amato, which is like a really cool thing. Grant Howitt is one of my favorite designers, and having Grant Howitt yell my name at me in recognition was a very cool moment. From like a board game perspective, Patrick Leader, who runs Leader Games, they make Root and all of that. I got to just like hang out with him in a hotel lobby for a little bit at the end of one night, and that was super meaningful because Root is why Slayers exists. And just like, again, like there's so many people, so many pardon me, amazing people that I got to hang out with. The night that Tony, Sam, Cassie, Mike, and I sat around, and Tony and Sam gave a lesson on like the history of like the Forge and all of that, was a fascinating night. That was really fun. So it was just a great experience. The things I learned that being around people and actually being able to connect with people in real life is the thing that energizes me in all this. Right? Like I was barely on Twitter the whole time, which is great. Twitter is primarily my way of interacting with the scene, and not having Twitter be that interaction, but instead being around people was the best. It was incredible. I learned that these sorts of events and interacting with people like this are the things that kind of inspire me. Like Mike and I on the drive home were just like so fucking ready to go. We were so ready to just design the hell out of some stuff and get ready to make the next conference or convention even better. I did learn that I would like to bring more people as part of the Gila RPG's booth. And I think generally speaking, I get access to more badges. So like I should just find people who want to go and get them badges and say, hey, if you're willing to run the booth for a couple of shifts, just so that I can have like a Friday morning to wander the hall without feeling like, oh, I got to get back. That's, I think, really important. Talking with Matthew Gravlin, who ran all of the events for the Possum Creek people, absolutely wanting to do that as well. Like having my games run at the conventions, because people can get like free GM badges to events if they run a certain number of hours of things. And I would just love to have a slew of like Slayer sessions and Nova sessions and Hunt sessions going on, so that people can see the games out in the area and then coming back in. Aaron, it was a really fascinating. I was vaguely aware of some of this stuff. I was never part of the Forge or even really the Google Plus stuff, but I was only kind of vaguely aware of it. But like Tony and Sam were like deeply aware of all of it, and so it was really interesting. Would you be wanting to find other designers to join and expand what's there, or volunteers? To join and expand like at my booth, you mean like in the booth space, or like volunteers for the booth space? That's a tricky thing, right? You only have so much space in the booth, and as you can kind of see, we kind of take up a shit ton of it with my stuff. I would feel bad like trying to bring another designer in and like not giving them the space at the booth, because primarily since I'm putting the bill for the space, I gotta sell my stuff, but like it would be I'm curious about it. Maybe that might change on a con by con basis. I know there's also kind of rumblings about like getting like a big block of things and then having it getting divided by a bunch of us. There's a lot of different ways that you can play with it in terms of like having an individual versus a split and things like that. And I'm not sure yet. Yeah, BLG, you had to go to the event because you GM'd, which was awesome. Which is really, really super cool. Yeah, I don't know. And also, Mike is going to be making more stuff. And Mike and I are truly like, the partnership is just merging more and more as we make more things together. And we have, not to get into the numbers, but we have relationships in terms of sales of books in which he's involved. And so he wants these books to be sold, and he has his own stuff. And again, it's not here, but he has like art on the other side of this thing, and he's going to bring a lot more art. And so I think just to kind of keep it focused, it would probably just be Mike and I, and then it would just be volunteers for people who just want a pass, who would be willing to run some shifts. Is sort of what I was thinking. Yeah, Aaron, it could be super stressful. I don't know if it would be. I don't know what that experience is like, running things for other people. What other things did I learn? You gotta eat healthy. If you don't, you're gonna feel like shit. You gotta at the Indianapolis Convention Center, you gotta have water of your own that you're bringing in, because the water at all the drinking fountains was hot. It was hot and it tasted like well water. So we brought our own water and kept refilling our own water bottles with that. Learned that during setup, and we're like, nope, pass. pass on that. Fruit's a good idea. Get the sugars, get the nutrients, get all that going on. I'm sure I learned other things, but also, forgetting it. I'm in a haze right now. Oh yeah, bring sunscreen if you're gonna be outside, for sure. Never saw the sun. I mean, I did, but like we were so inside in that booth the whole time. Um, One thing I learned is if you are interested in having a booth at Gen Con, but you don't want to do the full booth, they this year started the Makers Market, which is a smaller scale thing. And that's what Kyle and Kenny were doing. And it's much cheaper. It's a smaller space, and it's in a different part of the whole area. It's in the path between the exhibit hall and the free play area. But it could be like a somewhat affordable approach for people who are interested in doing something, especially if you have a smaller slew of things that you're like, I'm not sure how I would fill a booth or how I would run a booth, or I don't want to pay for a full booth. That would be an interesting thing for folks to consider as well. Okay, cool. Those are like the highlights. There were so many awesome things. I met so many amazing people. And again, if I tried to rattle everyone off, I know I'm going to forget people, and I don't want to have people forget. Yeah, double exposure. That would have been so cool. Logan was going there and telling me about it. It sounded awesome. I would have loved to go to the double exposure zone. That would have been cool, but I didn't. So I'm going to talk about numbers now. So if you're interested in numbers, hang out. If you're not interested in numbers, you can bounce. Yeah, I bet it was really cool. Yeah, I guess I could just go to Metatopia. Okay, so costs. Let's start with costs. Costs for a convention. What are they? Well, there's the application and the booth. Booth was about $2,000. About $2,000 for a booth. I could already sign up for next year, and it's like $2,100 for me to get a booth next year, if I want to lock in that rate now. So that's the big cost. There's a hotel, of course, involved as well. Now you have to go through their portal if you want to do all of that, or you can find your own accommodations. We ended up paying about $800 for the hotel. We split it. There was 2 of us. Now we got to save some money on our hotel experience because my wife is a globalist, which is just a membership at Hyatt because we stay at Hyatt's. And so we got free breakfast every morning, which was amazing. Which is why Brandon got to come and eat free breakfast with us. Our parking was covered as well. That's an important thing to keep in mind, that we were very lucky about that. Gas was really nothing because Chicago's not that far away. So we filled up once and really didn't burn through too much of a tank. Food, I can't possibly estimate how much food it was. It was awesome. It was such a delight to have you at breakfast. God damn, that was the best. Food was honestly not that much either. I don't really recall how much we spent on food, but it wasn't much. We never went out. Here's the thing. We did not go to Gen Con in Indianapolis for fine dining. So we did not go out. I know a lot of people went out to like dinners and nicer things like that, but Mike and I genuinely were so tired at the end of every day. We were like, I don't know, let's go find pizza somewhere or something really easy. We only went out the first night because we were the least tired the first night, and we just went to a Thai place that was close by, and it was fucking slammed. Everything is slammed around there. But otherwise, we were just too tired to do anything, so we ate cheap. Free breakfast, and we had cheap dinners, and we didn't eat lunch. So those are the big costs, our hotel and the booth space. So, revenue. How much did we make? In total, our grand total that we made throughout the convention was $8,766. That's how much we pulled in across the entire thing. That feels good. That seems good. I don't know if it's good or not compared to other people, but I know what it is compared to what we've done before. So PAX Unplugged, which we've done before, is one fewer day, which is important to keep in mind. We pulled in 5635 at PAX Unplugged in December of last year. So, 3K less, but one fewer day. Which was a Thursday. They don't do Thursday at PAX. And then there's Origins, which does have a Thursday. And at Origins, we made $2,625. Origins fucking sucked. Origins was horrible. We made more money, or pretty much as much money, on day one of GenCon as we did the entirety of Origins. Origins is just so not worth going to. They're so close to each other in terms of time of the year. And it's just wildly different mindsets of the people that are attending them. And scale. Just so many more people are going to GenCon. And those people are going to buy games. People at Origins were not going to buy games. Everyone I talked to had bad sales. And that's not just RPG people. That's the board game people I talked to as well. But at GenCon, they're buying games. They're buying a lot of games. I'll just say in sales. Which I think is interesting. I think it's interesting to know. We'll never go to Origins ever again. Like, there's no doubt about it. We have no interest in ever going to Origins. Yeah, getting is roughly 3 times what you spent back seems pretty decent, right? Yeah, it's good. This of course does not factor in costs like the cost of the books, but the books had already been printed. I already had those printed and everything like that, and I print at a scale where the cost per unit is very low. But we should consider the fact that that is part of the factor of the costs. In terms of getting like specific numbers about books in particular, Hunt, we sold 95 copies. We almost sold out of Hunt, which was really cool. What I'm really excited about with selling that many Hunt is Hunt was not Kickstarted. It did not have a crowdfunder. It had no marketing besides me shouting about this game, essentially. And we just released it. When it was done, we said, it's out. Here it is. And it's done really well. I'm really happy with that. And that's something that I want to be able to do, is to release games and have them do well without relying on Kickstarter. So the fact that at GenCon, 95 copies were sold, and a lot of them were people who did not know about Hunt. There were plenty of people who were like, I've heard about this, I want this. But there were also lots of people who were like, this sounds really interesting. Which was really, really cool. That was really neat. We also, I mean, it's the best looking cover. It's so good. I mean, it just draws you in. So we strategically put it at the end of the booth. There's another copy on the mirror side of the booth, so that no matter which direction you were coming from, you saw Hunt and you stopped. And people wanted to look at it. Hunt easily sold the most of everything that we sold. The next closest after that was Rune, which had 66 copies. People were into solo games. There were a lot of people who were familiar with solo RPGs here. At Origins, people generally, when I talked to them, were not as interested in solo RPGs or didn't know anything about them. People knew about them here, and they wanted to see what other new things you could do with solo RPGs. So Rune sold well. It also helped that you can kind of barely see it, but that fan that made me that really lovely, almost like Polly Pocket Megamax box that has the ability to set up Rune. We had that set up and using it as a way of showing people how Rune worked. And that helped a lot. Being able to see the game in action immediately, since it does have that sort of board gamey element to it, helped sell people. They seem to like that. And then number 3 was Slayers, with 41 copies. And you know how you sell Slayers, and how we sold most of our copies of Slayers? It was people coming up and saying, we play 5e, we want to try something different, and us telling them what Slayers is, and having it be the easy off-ramp for people who are playing the dragon game that still want to do kind of something in the fantasy space. They still want to fight monsters, but they don't want to play 5e anymore. It was easy enough to sell them on other things that weren't fantasy if they didn't want fantasy, because we had sci-fi in spades at our booth. But primarily most of the sales that we had with Slayers were, hey, I've been running D&D and I don't want to run it anymore. Do you got something that I can use to teach my players? And Slayers was the thing. So we're going to be making more Slayers stuff. We're going to try in the future to have sort of a more dedicated Slayers section, so that we can tell people, like, all you need is this core book. And that's all you need. Because that was a huge selling point too. For a lot of this was telling people everything you need is in this book. You don't need anything else. You don't need more books. That meant a lot to people. They liked that a lot. When they realize they don't need 3 books to run a game. But people who come from like Pathfinder and D&D are also used to games that have a shit ton of supplemental support. And so we can also set it up so it is like, all you need is this book. But if you are the person who likes having a lot of stuff, we got stuff for you in case you want that. And then from there on out, the numbers for the rest of them, they're all good. I'm really happy. We sold out of Seasons. I didn't bring that many of them, but we sold out of it. Sold out of Rigged, which is cool. Didn't bring a lot of them, but sold out of what we brought. Almost sold out of Corvid Court, which was cool. Sold a lot more light than I thought I would, because it's very explicitly, just one of the bullet points says it's inspired by Destiny. And you're at a gaming convention, you're going to run into fellow Destiny nerds. One person after another wanted to talk about their build. We'd share stories about how we're burned out on Destiny, and then they'd buy light, which was cool. Those are the numbers. I can answer more about numbers and things like that, but that's kind of the big stuff. People love games with 4 letters. Yeah, they do. They love 4-letter games or single syllable games that just absolutely trash your SEO. I had this wild experience. One last sort of anecdote before we probably wrap up here. When Sam Sorensen, Tony Vacinda, Cassie Bothwin, Mike Riemann, and I were just hanging out at the hotel. Sam, again, who is an academic of games, understands them in a really cool way, said, let me tell you what the next Spencer Campbell game is. And then for like the next minute to 2 minutes, kind of perfectly described what a Spencer Campbell game is in like broad strokes. And I'm just sitting there stunned, realizing that I have such a type, such a way that I write things and do things. And I'm sitting there like, wow, that was exactly right. And he's like, yeah, you have a type. We know what a Spencer Campbell game is at this point. And it was very funny. And part of it is the 4-letter words, or the single strong word that is terrible for SEO. So yeah, that was GenCon. It was awesome. I got a bunch of cool stuff. I had an amazing, amazing time meeting people. Generally, the process was pretty easy for us in terms of setting up and taking down. Running the booth, we're going to do it better by bringing on some more volunteers next year and getting them badges. I'd like to run some games at it. Or not, I don't personally want to run the games, but I you know, people who want to run the game so that they can get the GM badge. But having some of my games run at the event, yeah, it is very Spencer Campbell. It was awesome. It was awesome. And like I said, I came back really refreshed and kind of excited about game design again. In a way that I wasn't before, or I haven't been in a while. I've got some really cool stuff cooking. Like, we got really cool things coming soon. Not only like at the next convention space with how we're going to do things, but just generally speaking. Mike and I think we've cracked the code on like a really fucking cool project. It's going to take us a little while to get it off the ground, but like, it's going to be awesome. And I have just generally kind of some cool stuff going with like Nova and Slayer. So I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really happy. As you can tell, my voice is gone. So I'm gonna wrap up here and then give myself a break. I'm gonna go on vocal rest for the rest of the day. I got Reap launching tomorrow, which was a thing to do. Oh yeah, that was the one last thing. We had a QR code for Reap, which was really smart. A lot of people scanned it and followed the campaign, which was an important thing for us to do. So yeah, that's launching tomorrow. So this time tomorrow, I'm gonna be playing Terminus by John Boyle. I'm gonna have stepped away from the computer. I'm gonna go play my game. Thanks, Aaron. You all, thank you so much for hanging out. Hopefully this was interesting. Hopefully this was informative. I hope you have yourselves a great rest of the day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever it is you are. I hope you're good. Be good. You're awesome. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.